What is up, Valorant fans? Welcome back to the Valorant Report. I'm IHOLDSHIFT, and today we're talking agents, specifically tier lists. Where do they fall? Who's good? Who's bad? I will say this was a very difficult list to come up with simply because I really do believe that all 9 characters that we have right now are all relatively closely balanced. That said, I did go through and list out all 4 abilities, rated them from S tier to essentially tier 3. Then I also assigned a value to how I think the strength of the character is on a solo level and what I think the character's strengths are in a team level. Again, ranking it from S tier down to tier 3. Averaged everything out, and then made a couple of small moves or adjustments depending on where I think the ceiling of that character could potentially be, depending on who is playing it. So let's take a look at number 9 on the list. And it's going to feel a little bad, but someone has to be down there. I've got Omen at number 9, mostly because, yes, he does provide some high mobility, but Shrouded Step, I think, is a tier 3 ability. It has a very limited range. You can get high, you can go across hallways without being seen, but beyond that, it's very well telegraphed. It's very easy to determine where exactly he's going to be going off of that Shrouded Step teleport. The Paranoia ability I actually have as a tier 2, simply because it is relatively slow moving, and because of that, it becomes easy to dodge. And if that's the only status effect he brings to the mix, he's not going to be able to provide a lot of utility to the team. Where he finds his strongest value is in his dark cover. 2 free charges of a smoke that has a relatively solid distance and a relatively good amount of time that it exists on the map. And with only having a 30-second cooldown, you can toggle between these relatively reasonably to use them multiple times per match. It's an S tier ability without question. But then you get to his ultimate ability, which is a 7-tick generation, and it's extremely loud when you try to use it globally. Everyone's going to know when you're using it. So because of that, I have it listed as a tier 2. Yes, there's the potential of surprising a squad maybe in the middle of a battle, so your sound is a little bit more concealed, but I just don't think you're going to get away with it once players start to become more in tune with the sound effects and what the effects look like. So because of that, I think his team play is, again, relatively low. I have him as a tier 2 team play character. His solo play is a little bit higher because of it. I've got him at tier 1, simply because I think individually you can make some plays happen. But at the end of the day, everything is reliant on how you use your dark cover and if you can connect your paranoia for me. And because of that, I've got him in the 9th spot. In the 8th spot, I've actually got Brimstone, which some of you may not have expected him to be this low. But flat out, you take a look at his stim beacon, it just doesn't really do much. It forces your team to stand in one area, and then again with the rate of fire change, it's going to make your recoil patterns and your spray pattern corrections feel definitely different. Because of that, I've got it listed as a tier 3 ability. I just don't see it being used all that often, not to mention the fact that the rest of his abilities are also based on a cost system, and once you're tight on money, Stim Beacon is the last thing you're going to be picking up. Incendiary is his second, only 1 charge of it, and it costs 200, which is not bad. It's got some good area denial. It's used as a Molotov. It bounces off walls. That's all perfectly fine, but I still think it's a tier 3 ability simply because it's relatively easy to avoid. Plus the fact that it does self and team damage makes it, again, placement extremely important as far as how you use it. But then you've got Sky Smoke. Like Omen, he's got the ability to completely manipulate line of sight breaks. So because of the Sky Smoke being relatively global, not fully, I've got this as an S tier ability. The smokes last a very long time. They encompass a pretty large area, and you can put them down under the safety of your own team or cover or whatever it happens to be before you make an engagement come through. But then you get to his Orbital Strike. Yes, it's mostly global, huge nuke, but very easy to read and dodge for the most part unless you land somebody dead center of the circle. So with that in mind, I still think it's a tier 1 because it has instant blow up potential, but it's not any higher simply due to the fact that, once again, it's relatively easy to dodge. So what does that mean for his solo play capabilities and his team play capabilities? Personally, on a solo level, I just don't think you can find a lot of value from him. Yes, you might be able to get a free kill off the Orbital Strike, and maybe you can self-stim beacon yourself, but generally speaking, all of his value is going to come off of what he's able to do with his smokes from the team level. With that, I've got him as a tier 2 solo play character and a tier 1 team play character. Going into the 7th position, and this one I think will definitely be a surprise considering the utility she could potentially bring, but I've got Viper in the 7th spot. Flat out, Snakebite is cool. 2 charges, 100 cost. It does some slowing. It does some damage. It's just an on-area effect ground ability, but I think it's going to be easy to avoid just by essentially sitting back and waiting for it to expire. I've got this as a tier 2 ability, mostly again because her teammates will take damage from it if they step on it, so the status effects apply flying the team, definitely keep it a little bit of a tier lower. Her Poison Cloud, though, I've got as a tier 1 ability. You get 1 charge of it. It does cost 200 while also maintaining your resource of the toxin that you have to manage. The thing about this Poison Cloud is you can pick up that cloud and redeploy it as you see fit, which is super, super awesome. It's a movable smoke, and you can zone things out. Viper, of course, does not take damage from this, but the rest of her teams and, of course, the enemy, they will. So again, you got to be a little bit careful of how you're positioning it, but still a tier 1 ability. Same with the Toxin Screen. Tier 1 ability, 1 charge. You can only use it once per round, but it's got a very large encompassing space as it can go almost across the entire map if you use it properly, which essentially means it's a long isolation element all the way through hallways and things of the nature. Again, it does take the resource, and your teammates will take damage from this while Viper will not, so you got to be careful about the placement and when you activate and deactivate it. Same kind of storyline with the Poison Cloud. And then you've got Viper's ult. I still have this listed as a tier 1 ability simply because its effect on the map is ginormous, and Viper can exist in this for free. The only way that this becomes a problem is if your use of it is bad and your teammates can't help you out at all when you're in a tight spot. Again, the decay is universal with the exception of Viper, so you have to be very careful of how you're using this, and if used incorrectly, it could hamper not only your teammates but also you individually. Beyond that, for her solo play and team play capabilities, I still have her down as a tier 1. So why have her so low? My simple fact of the matter is her ceiling is extremely high, and it's going to be down to the players that are able to master the positioning and usage of her Poison Cloud and her Toxic Screen before really she can climb the tier ranks. I think generally for the casual player, she's going to be very difficult to perfect. Going into my 6th spot, I got Sova here, and for as much utility as he brings to the intel portion of the game, everything that he puts out is destroyable that aids in his ability to do recon. His Owl Drone costs 300, you get 1 charge of it, and again, it can be destroyed. I think it's a tier 2 ability. It's good, you can mark people with the target bolt, but generally, it's going to be relatively quickly destroyed once people start looking for it. The Shock Bolt I have as actually a tier 3 ability. It seems cool because you can bounce it, but beyond that, it feels like it's relatively hard to land, and it doesn't really do that much damage by what we could tell. If it is hitting, it doesn't feel like it's hitting for that much. The biggest utility for Sova comes out of his Recon Bolt. His signature ability charges every 35 seconds. It's free intel. It also can bounce up to 2 times, so once you start perfecting the geometry, you can check corners from long distances. You can also scout out cheeky parts of bomb sites or potential hits if you're playing defensively. It's an S tier ability. It's free intel. You can fire it off safely, and you get that information globally to everybody on your team. Then you get the Hunter's Fury. I will list this as a tier 1 ultimate. It does take 7 ticks to generate, but once you get some information, it can absolutely melt people. If you hit people with it, it will deal a significant amount of damage and mark them to your team. So the follow-up should be relatively easy. The only reason why it's not an S tier ultimate is because the randomness of potentially not hitting it, and maybe the need to be able to combo it up with somebody else. As we look at this character, though, on his solo and his team play, I've got him listed tier 1 in each of those departments. I think he brings a lot of utility individually, where if you can play off of your own intel, you can make solo plays happen. But more importantly, I feel like his success will be based off the metric of how you can communicate your information to your team and how they can follow up on it. I have him tier 1 all the way through, but only a top 6 character at the moment. In my 5th spot, I've got Breach, the Initiator. I think he's going to be one of those characters that is a must pick up just because his offensive ability is absolutely insane when it comes to clearing out bomb sites. But beyond that, you can also use him for retakes. His Aftershock is just okay, though. It's the wall ability that does a line damage on the back end of a wall once you target one, and it does deal significant damage, but it has a long channel time. And with that, it's relatively easy to dodge. You're going to be using this to essentially clear out cheeky corners as you're about to enter into a bomb site most likely. Flashpoint, I've actually got as a tier 3 ability. It just feels like it does not find the same kind of utility that something like Curveball would. Beyond that, the distance that you have to cover to take full use of that Flashpoint is going to be essentially null for a solo Breach player. You have to set up your teammates before they start to make pushes with this, and even still, I think a Curveball serves the purpose better. Fault Line is his signature ability. I like this ability because it has a very long reach, it's on a 35-second cooldown, and it gives the status effect of that daze, which is super important when it comes to locking down things like hallways on initial pushes. I will still say that it is relatively telegraphed and you can't avoid it, and because of that, I've only got it as a tier 1 ability. But then you get to the Rolling Thunder. The cone area on this thing is massive. It's a knockup. It's a slow. It's a daze. It's got everything you want and more in one ultimate. It's an S tier ult without question. So when it comes to the solo play and the team play of Breach, solo plays are going to be a little bit harder for him to follow up on. Even if you hit a flashpoint, an aftershock, or a fault line, even a rolling thunder, your ability to individually follow up is going to be relatively limited because you're likely throwing out those abilities from behind walls. However, for the team play, it is an S-Class, the only S-Class team play character that I have listed. There are so many status effects that he wields, it's absolutely insane. Without a doubt, an S-tier character for team play. Going into my top 4, I've got Jett. Flat out, this character's value comes based on whoever is playing them. Cloudburst is not a long-lasting smoke, but you get 3 charges and you can bend them while throwing them a pretty long distance. I've got it as a tier 2 ability because for me, it's going to come down to who can master the placement of those cloudbursts first. Even still, it's short-lasting, so you have to take advantage of whatever it hits very, very quickly. Not as good as some of the other smokes in the game, so it's just a tier 2. Her updraft, though, provides the best vertical mobility in the game. 2 charges of it means that you can get high very quickly and very often. It's a tier 1 ability. The only reason why I have it not an S tier is the fact that the charge and the animation do take a while. So if you use it to get into a fight, you could just be sitting midair waiting for someone to shoot you like a piñata. The Tailwind, again, would be an S tier ability, but it, again, depends on if you're finding kills to replenish it multiple times. If you're having a tough time getting kill confirmations, you're going to be sitting without your signature ability for potentially a while. The burst of the dash is very good. It gives you the ability to be extremely evasive and slippery, but it is dependent on if you're getting killed. So with that, I've got it listed as still just a tier 1 ability. But then you get to the Blade Storm. Aim perfect, whether you're moving, midair, standing still, doesn't make a difference. It's aim perfect. So essentially what that means is when you click, it'll go wherever you click. It also has the ability to one-tap headshot and reset full charges as soon as you get a kill. It's absolutely an S tier ability. And even if you use the right click to send all of them out at once, it will reset as long as you get that kill. The potential of popping off with this character is extremely high, which is why as a solo play character, she's also rated as an S tier capability. However, if you are not playing well as Jett, you're bringing absolutely nothing to the team. And because of that, I've got her as a tier 2 when it comes to team play and why she only sits in the 4th spot. Going to the top 3. Cypher is number 3 for me as a Sentinel player because simply his defensive capabilities are completely unmatched. Trapwire, it's insane. It's an S tier ability. You got 2 charges, they cost you 200. Sure, that's expensive, but you can pick them up and redeploy them if they're not destroyed. Beyond that, not just walking through the trapwires, but if someone destroys them, it's free detection on where those players are coming from. The Cyber Cage will be a tier 1 ability in my mind. It's a smoke, it slows, you can activate it when you so choose. It's brilliant. The only problem is once you're on the offense, it loses some value and only becomes just an okay smoke for the most part. Same kind of story with the Spy Cam. Tier 1 ability. It has the ability of defensively of single-handedly watching over a bomb site. You can mark people with the darts, but you only get the 1 charge. And even if you pick it up to redeploy it, there's a 15-second redeploy time. And beyond that, I just don't see it finding a lot of value offensively with the exception of watching flanks. And then you've got Neural Theft, which if it didn't require you to be right on top of an enemy dead body, to use it, it would be an S tier ability because it gives you the wall hacks. But because you have to be close to an enemy, you've got to walk up to a dead enemy in the first place, it only stays tier 1 in my book. But as far as solo and team play goes, I think that individually you can follow up on all of your abilities. He's a tier 1 solo play character, and he would be an S tier team play character if it wasn't for the fact that he desperately lacks on offense. He's just way too stationary, way too slow, but defensively, if you could swap agents at the half, Cypher would be an S tier defensive class without question. But since you would have to use him on offense, it bodes an interesting question. If you start on offense first, do you play Cypher and hope that you can get to the defensive rounds at a marginal scoreline? In my second spot, individually, this Phoenix character is going to be able to provide a lot of really exciting plays. His Blaze is really good. Tier 1 ability without question, and even though it doesn't cover as much distance as the Toxic screen would, you can curve the Blaze Wall, which gives you the opportunity of setting up multiple different lines of attack or defense, depending on how you set it up with your team. Beyond that, this guy is a self-sustained monster. He can self-sustain and heal himself off of his Blaze. Curveball, S tier class ability. It's an easy ability to hit. It curves around walls, which essentially means it's like a pop flash. It's going to be very difficult for teams to respond to this as it comes around corners late. It has 2 charges and they only cost 100 each. Absolutely S tier. His hot hands, just like the incendiary for Brimstone, serves as a Molotov. It bounces off walls, explodes on contact with a surface. It has 1 charge, but again, it's replenished by kills or round completions. And with that, again, it means if you're not finding kills, you're not able to get that molly up all that often. It would be a tier 1 ability because you can self-sustain off of it, but because you have to earn it by kills, I imagine some players will be stuck without it for multiple rounds in a row, and because of that, I've got it as a tier 2. His ultimate, though, run it back, S tier, without a question. Free life? Are you kidding me? At worst, you're getting intel when you go to push a bomb site. At best, you're getting intel and a couple of kills before you get teleported back. With that in mind, his whole kit providing a lot of extra utility and sustain for him individually, he is another S tier solo play character. But because his curveball's so good and his blades can be synergized with good attack approaches, he becomes a tier 1 team play character. Even though his run it back is technically a solo based ability, the fact that he can transmit either kills or information back to his team is massive for the squad. And because of that, I've got him in the number 2 spot, only second to Sage. Another Sentinel character, and every single one of her abilities are absolutely insane. Her Barrier Orb I've got listed as a tier 1. It feels like it should be an S tier ability, but it costs a lot, and you can accidentally block the vision and pathways of your teammates if you don't have good placement. The ability to get to high ground with it is very strong though, which is why I still consider it to be a tier 1 ability. For Slow Orb up next, I also have listed as a tier 1, 2 charges, 100 each. It's actually a pretty wide area of effect with a dramatic slow, and it also increases the volume of footsteps when you're on it. The unfortunate thing is your teammates can also be slowed by this. So if your placement is not great, you actually completely hinder your team's ability to move. I still keep it tier 1 though. The slow is very strong, and as long as your placement is good, you'll find value. Healing Orb, it's free, it heals, it's on a 35-second cooldown. The range is pretty steep as well as far as how you can connect with your teammates. S tier ability without question. Resurrection, I only have as a tier 1 simply due to the fact that the animation's relatively long, which means that the player that's being resurrected can be followed up on very quickly, and it forces Sage to get right on top of your teammate's body before you can get a resurrection off. Solo play-wise, I think there's enough self-sustain built into her Healing Orb. She can convert off of her own slows, and she can raise herself with a barrier. It's a tier 1 solo play character. Team play-wise, though, again, it's healing. It's healing and potentially a 6v5. She's also a tier 1 only because she could potentially hinder her team with bad placement of the slow orb or the barrier orb. So let's finish things off by talking about Raze, the 10th agent that we're going to be seeing. As far as the speculation has deciphered, she will be coming as a demolitions expert, and with that, she will have a couple of different things in her kit. First and foremost, her Boombot is a little tracking robot that gets sent out in a line, and it'll lock on to enemies if they're in a cone. It looks like it's going to cost 100. You'll have one of them. It's going to provide some value, but my biggest question mark is how fast does it move and how much damage does it deal? The Cluster Grenade will be our second ability. It costs 200. You get one of them, and just like any other Cluster Grenade ever, it has an initial explosion, and then it creates a bunch of sub-munitions that will also deal area damage afterwards. Her signature is going to be free, apparently. It's going to be a rocket launcher. I've also heard that it could potentially be called Showstopper, and you'll essentially fire a rocket, deal massive area damage on contact. Self-explanatory. Her final ultimate is going to be the Blast Pack. It's going to cost 7 points, and it's essentially a C4. That's all I got to say about it. I'm very excited to see how Raze is played. I can't really give official rankings on her because we don't know what it looks like and what the damage numbers are going to be, but generally speaking, I think the Demolitions Expert idea is going to favor a lot of casual and newer players, so naturally her tier will go up just a touch because she'll be a very easy character to play. It just comes down to how much value will she really bring off of her abilities in her kit. As I had mentioned though, I will be doing individual videos on each of the characters going over their pros and cons and maybe a little bit more of a guide style for you. So for now, get down in those comments. comments. What do you think of the tier list? Did I overvalue some characters? Did I undervalue some of the agents that I had listed lower? Let me know what you think, and while you're down there, if you like the video, like the video. If you want to see more content coming out, make sure you hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell to know when those videos pop up. Until the next one, hope you guys all keep holding it down. So long.